Hi, everybody.
So awesome. We're starting to get some people fill in. Thank you guys for joining us today. As you guys know, I became a fast proponent of TrendSpider, and special thanks to David, our moderator from our chat room, who discovered this product. Since David brought it to my attention, I've quickly fallen in love with it. You guys have seen it on the streams. I've been showing you guys charts, kind of slowly introducing the community to it. We've posted on social media a little bit, and so, the goal of this webinar is really to just have Dan the expert here, because I'm slowly becoming more familiar, but Dan is an expert, works closely with the developers. Dan is a trader, and, this is a great opportunity for you guys to see the product fully unleashed, how to utilize it, and, really be a smarter trader, a better trader. So, Dan's going to go into Dan's background, talk about the product, the team, and go through some charts and really show you guys all the different nuances of it. And then at the end, we'll wrap it up and we'll talk a little bit about Dan, you might want to take the presentation back. It looks like you allowed.
I pressed the wrong button there.
That's all right. These things happen. So, and then at the end, Dan will talk a little bit about the roadmap and, what's to come for the product of TrendSpider. So here's your screen.
There we go.
Good stuff. Okay. Man, tell us about yourself. Tell us about yourself, TrendSpider.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining. We appreciate your time. We're a relatively new company, so it's it's great to be getting the reception that we're getting. And thanks Dan, Lucian, and the rest of the Bullish Bears guys. When you build trading software, you get to know a lot of traders, and these are some of the best that I've met. So it's an honor to get the chance to work with them and to present to you guys.
Thank you.
So a little background about what TrendSpider is and how it came about. I've been a trader since about 2008, and that was a crazy time to start trading. I've always been a big believer in technical analysis, a big believer in charts. And one of the things that I realized after trading for a few years was while I have a system for how I trade, how I draw a trend line, how I analyze a chart, it's very hard for me to follow that system, consistently. I'll make little mistakes by, not zooming back out and analyzing the same number of candlesticks that everybody makes, every time. And, in realizing that it was a bit of a moment where you realize that you don't really know if your approach really works because you don't do it the same way every single time. So, we kind of set out on this experiment a few years ago to see if we can automate that. And in doing so, to not only improve the quality of the analysis and its consistency, but save traders time and, save us eye strain from having to stare at 50 charts all day long. So that's kind of the product that we built here. It's a very different type of charting software than probably some of the other things you've seen out there, in the sense that it tries to do everything automatically for you and assist you and make you a better trader by allowing you to analyze a lot more symbols with a higher degree of accuracy a lot quicker.
So what I'd like to follow up on that and interject. So, and spot on. You guys have heard us talk a lot about time and you guys all know as traders the investment in time that we put in, and our ability to make mistakes and miss things. And I made a couple examples just in the last week, guys, where I completely missed a trend line on my chart. A lot of times they match up perfect with TrendSpider, and that that makes me feel good. Hey, I'm trading like a computer, but I make mistakes and there's lines that I've missed, and it takes time. So it's quick, it's at a glance, and you guys are going to get an opportunity to see how much time it's going to give you back, where you can just kind of like set it and forget it, and it's there, and eventually you guys will know this platform like the back of your hand, and it'll be simple. So go ahead, Dan.
Absolutely. So what I'd like to do is just take you guys through a live demo of the tool. So this is just off my computer. It's running here, and I'm controlling the mouse. And like a lot of trading tools you've probably seen out there, there's a way to select a symbol. You can control the layout, how many charts you want on your screen. We're just going to keep it to one to keep it nice and simple. You can control your individual charts here. And you can control the automated analysis options along the top here. And these apply to all the charts that you have open. On the right, you have your watch list. We put one together for this webinar, but you can create your own, and it actually generates a bunch for you as well. And then a list of any alerts that you've created. And we're going to spend a lot of time on alerts because these are not your father's price alerts. The first thing I just want to point out, and you'll see this on this chart right here, is this just does not have just a single time frame on it. This chart says daily versus weekly, and it's because it's actually comparing and meshing data from two separate time frames together on one chart. And that's a core thing for us to point out here. We believe that short-term price action will interact more predictably with long-term price trends than short-term price trends. So we give you a very easy and intuitive way to pull trends from longer time frames onto shorter time frame charts. And that's what we're doing here with the daily versus weekly. As far as we know, there's no other tool, and we've looked, that allows you to do this. And this multi-time frame analysis, which you can switch on in this toolbar here, applies to all of the analysis options that we're going to go over as we go through this platform. Now, I just want to highlight, when you see daily as the primary, it means the primary time frame trend lines, indicators will all be solid, and the secondary time frames will be dashed, right? So that's how you can tell the difference, and you can see, which ones are which on your chart very quickly. Now, multi-time frame analysis is a pretty simple concept at a high level, right? You take the trend lines from the weekly chart and you put them on the daily chart, and you allow users to trade off it. It gets very interesting when you start to do this with indicators. And that's what I've done here by turning the indicators panel on. Now, just briefly, you can, of course, customize these indicators. There's a ton of them. You can set up whichever ones you prefer. What is important to note is that the indicators are also plotted across time frames. So you can see for each of the indicators we've added, which is the Williams R, the RSI, and the Bollinger Bands, there are toggles now for daily and weekly. And you can enable and disable them pretty easily just by clicking on them. Now, what's really interesting about this, I'm going to spend just a moment here, is you have the daily price action on this Apple chart, but you have the weekly Bollinger Bands encapsulating it. And you can see how price has reacted as it's interacted with this long-term trend. And this is going to be the case on just about any time frame combination. The longer-term Bollinger Bands are a great predictor of a point where price will reverse or bounce or do something. And you can see that as we flip through these charts, pretty much every time it approaches one of these bands, there's some type of price interaction that occurs. It's also worth noting that on these lower indicators, we also have two time frames. So what you essentially end up having is a slow and a fast Williams R, with the dashed one being the weekly Williams R, and down here the dashed one being the weekly RSI, and the solid ones being the daily. And it's very interesting and fun to look for crosses of these because they very often are confirmation that price is going to change direction when you can see these, especially when there's multiple such indicators that kind of indicate it. So like a long-term Bollinger Band across on, the Williams, across on the RSI, a trend line. Those things together are much more powerful than any one of them alone. Now, I'm going to flip multi-time frame off very quick just to show you we have automated Fibonacci retracements. This is going to find the most recent meaningful move on any chart and perform an automated retracement. And now I'm going to show you that it works across time frames as well. And you can have the long-term Fibonacci from the weekly chart, which is this bigger one up here, and the short-term Fib from the daily chart plotted together. And again, we believe that long-term Fibs are more powerful than short-term Fibs in terms of predicting a reversal point or anything like that. As we kind of go through the tool, I'm just going to clean this up a little bit. The next option that's very interesting and fun is the ability to automatically recognize candlestick formations. So, you can just check which ones you care about. These may be dojis, haramis, hammers, whatever patterns you tend to look for. And when you click back to the chart, and turn this on, it will automatically highlight them and label them for you. And as you move your mouse over the labels, it'll tell you which candlestick formation that is. Now, what's really cool about TrendSpider is, it does all this analysis for you, and it's very good at doing it, but it doesn't have to do it any particular way. All of the analysis that you see can be fully customized by the user. All you have to do that is you click on the gears, and you can configure, and I don't want to get into it too much here in this webinar, but you can configure the analysis settings to look for shorter-term patterns, longer-term patterns. You can customize it to analyze the charts any way that you want so that it matches your trading style. Now, a lot of people like to ask why it selects the trend lines it selects, how it selects them, when it selects them. And the system is intended to be fully transparent about all those things. So one thing that you can do is you can turn manual tuning mode on here, and it's going to show you everything that the system sees, which is where it starts. So we start by taking the analysis settings that the user can customize and then detecting every possible trend line on the chart. Then we filter those down using a set of formulas that the user can customize if they chose to, although our defaults are very good. And in doing so, we detect which ones matter the most for this series of price action across time frames. We then combine that data along with indicators, and we give you the ability to very quickly run through a watch list and analyze as many symbols as you want without really breaking a sweat. You can just use your keyboard arrow keys like I'm doing here. Now, this gets really cool once you start taking action based on these charts. Let's say you like QQQ here and you think it's going to pull back to this golden trend line down here. You've been flipping through charts and this is the best one you saw. You could right-click on that trend line and tell the system to monitor it for you. So you can have the system monitor this trend line for a breakthrough, a touch, or a bounce. Remember, we're on the daily chart, but we can actually set that to go off when a 5, 10, or any candlestick we want does that. And this means that the system will watch that trend line and let me know when a 15-minute candlestick on the 15-minute chart breaks or touches or bounces on this daily trend line. The system can watch it for as long as you really need it to. You can have it alert you multiple times if you think that's necessary, or if you select multiple triggers and you want to get all of them. And you can create the alert. It's then just going to highlight that, and it's going to watch that for you. Now, what's super cool about this is this follows the slope. You will never have to adjust this price alert by hand like you would in Thinkorswim or Interactive Brokers or any other trading platform. It's dynamic. And it works on trend lines from any time frame. Here I can create one on the weekly trend line from the daily chart. And I can have this one go off on the 15-minute candlestick there. What else is very cool about this is it can work on indicators as well. So if my strategy, because of how this has behaved in the past, is to buy the Q when it bounces off the middle Bollinger Band, I can right-click on that weekly Bollinger Band, and I can set up an alert in the same way, and the system will watch the Bollinger Band and follow its waveform. And that's important when you're looking at a lot of stocks and a lot of charts. It's very difficult to pay attention to 50 different charts on your screen once you've decided when you want to trade them. This allows you to have TrendSpider systems that live in the cloud do the monitoring for you and let you know when it's time for you to look at the chart again. If you think about the workflow, you make a watch list, you set up your analysis, you flip through your watch list, you create alerts, and then you relax and wait for your alerts to actually fire. So that's essentially how the platform works. I'm gonna hand it over back to Dan here and see what's next for this webinar. Are you there, Dan?
Yes, I am. I was muted.
Okay.
So, yes, hello. So this is fantastic. Guys, you've just witnessed him pretty much give you, a total overview of the program. So one thing that's really nice is that you're realizing right now, you're probably saying to yourself, this is a very simple product to use that does some very complicated things. Dan was able to go through and, pretty eloquently and simply put how to use this product to the best of its ability without really tuning it that much. If you haven't tried this product yet, You now have this to kind of walk you through. This is going to be recorded so you can play it back. But, in general, this product was designed by traders for traders. And, you guys are seeing on a daily and weekly time frame, there's great opportunity for swing traders. But, as you guys know, a lot of you guys are probably thinking like, hey, I'm a day trader. It's great. He's showing me great, long-term trends, and swing trading setups. But what's really interesting is if you take a look at, some of the other symbols, like if you throw Cron up there. So Cron is you guys know this is kind of a very volatile kind of pump and dump pot stock. And if you're looking for intraday trading on something like this, it's going to be really volatile. You're going to want the best entries. And so using a 5-minute chart up against the 60-minute time frame, you're going to see these trend lines. And even with manual tuning turned off, so like Dan showed you in the middle, when he turns manual tuning on, you're going to see all those additional lines. So those dotted lines, those are your secondary, time frame. So that's the 60-minute. The solid is the 5-minute. You're going to look and go, okay, so what's happening with Cron? Where are the, you might turn off, like, when we're trading, we have the 5-minute simple moving average on. Dan doesn't have any of those simple moving averages on, but you guys know that's something I use, for gauging momentum. So I might put the, the 9 EMA or the 50 SMA up on the chart, and you guys can use those indicators in real time on a 5-minute chart, along with these angular supports and momentum lines to make better trades. You're going to make more informed trades with this. You're going to find those highlighted breakout and breakdown signals that are going to allow you to, make better scalping positions and really keep you, tight with your entries and exits. You're going to make better entries and exits. It's going to make you a better trader. And you guys might find that, intraday, finding those 5-minute grinders that we talk about, they just kind of grind throughout the day. Where do I take profit? I mean, you're going to have the trend lines drawn right on there. The guesswork is kind of taken out of it. So I think it's very important for you guys to consider all of those different time frames that this could be used at. So you cover the daily and weekly. Me personally, I like taking the 5-minute in the daily chart. So I'll give you guys an example. Dan, can you go to Twitter really quick and have the 5-minute and daily chart there?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. So this is something I've been talking about this week. You guys can see a lot of these conviction lines. So when you see a lot of different converging trend lines, you guys know those are like really major areas of support and resistance. I was mentioning today, earlier in the chat room, I was looking for Twitter to start trending over 30.50, 30.55, and really leave the $30.50 range behind to get any kind of momentum. And if you look at the, let's see, you've got the simple moving average. I don't think you can see the 50. Really the highest next moving average would be the 200 simple moving average, which I think is probably somewhere up around $32. But as you guys know, when we're looking at day trading, we're watching that 200 SMA, we're watching that 50 SMA, and you might not be able to see it until you zoom out. So on a 5-minute chart, it's really kind of condensing. Oh, there's the 200 SMA. So Dan's going to create an alert right there at that line. So if we got a breakout, we got a major breakout where we've got a channel that's acting as strong resistance, and you guys can see it right on this chart. Every time we've got up in this range, we've had big problems. We're also trapped underneath those blue lines, which are angular resistance. So all of that pressure has been building up, and you look for that pop, and you use your other lower indicators if you want, or even without them. I haven't really started using them yet. I do have access to the beta that has these.
They're released now.
Oh, they are released. Okay, cool. So
they were released yesterday.
Okay, great. So that's great to know. So you guys are going to.
This is actually great right here. You can see the daily trend line. I took the 5-minute trend lines off it, and how short-term price is interacting with it.
I mean, so a lot of you guys are thinking, hey, I'm a scalper. How does this help me? And you can use it with stocks like Twitter. You can use it with penny stocks. You can use it with Tron. You can use it with pretty much anything. And there's a futures product as well and a crypto product as well. So if you're watching this video and you're like, hey, what about me? What about Forex? They have access to all those different, you could build your own watch list with these different tickers. And so there's really nobody that's been left behind in terms of being able to use this product. So pretty fantastic stuff, real-time data on these. And I'm just looking at the questions right here. I was going to ask the same question. Yeah, so Dan, what is I know it's real-time, but is there a couple second tick between the 5-minute candles for stocks?
Yeah, so there's a delay based because it's a browser-based tool. This similar to what you'd see with TradingView or Chart IQ, but a few seconds. What is beautiful though is the alerts live on the server. They don't live in your computer or on your browser. You don't even have to have it open. And because they live server-side, they are real-time, and they're going off a direct market data feed into, I think, every exchange. So they're very quick.
So I've seen that in action, guys. I've gotten the audible alerts on my computer. At the same time, I'm getting, a text on my phone with all my notes put in there. You can get really descriptive with the notes. So you could have, several alerts set up on one particular stock, but you can go, hey, which one did it hit? Did it hit my upper line, my lower line? You can fill all that data out, and you could be anywhere in the world and get that text message on your phone, and that's your entry for your swing trade. That's what you've been waiting for. You can take that trade. As you guys know, there's that, you see these commercials online where the guy's out at dinner, hang on, I got to make a trade, and that's really the world that we live in. So, using this tool as an asset to help you, increase your, probabilities, because we always deal in probabilities, but your probabilities that you're going to have a successful trade are going to go way up using this tool. And, and furthermore, being a beginner trader, which we have a lot of beginner traders in our community, and you could even say somebody who's been trading 6 months, a year, that's a beginner trader. It all depends on how much time that you've spent, really doing this, acquired all this knowledge. But this is a tool to make you more knowledgeable. He showed you the candlesticks. He's showing you these different indicators. But really the candlestick tool, which we're really heavy on in terms of patterns and candlestick patterns, you guys know we talk about it, ad nauseum. They're right there. And he's going to keep adding other features to this, so you'll get more candlestick patterns. I know at some point I'm jumping the gun here because I definitely want to hear you talk about the roadmap. But at some point there's going to be candlestick pattern scanning, I believe, in the future. So I won't have you talk about that yet, but essentially, there's a lot more coming for this product that Dan spoke with me about, but you can't go wrong with the tool, guys. And there's other products out there that are maybe similar priced. There's some that are overpriced that don't do what these guys are doing. So this is a very, very unique product that I know a lot of our traders have started to pick up and use, and we're getting great feedback. So I'm going to keep opening it up to questions. I see you guys are chatting in here. Melrod.
I can answer that question.
Yep.
A few things to point out. This trend broke. If you can see this vertical line that kind of starts at the bottom at this blue label that pops up, this is the point in time when this chart was analyzed, right? So everything to the right of it was not taken into account. You'll see when I refresh this, it's likely going to update that analysis and zoom in, which is what it did there, right? And this line moved all the way over to the right again. So when the trend that you're trading breaks, you can have the system reanalyze it and try to figure out what the new trend in it is. But until you tell it to do that, it's going to keep the trend that you initially had when you last looked at it on the chart, so that if you're in a trade based on that trend, it doesn't change on you on the chart. So you actually have full control over refreshing that, and you can do that by clicking at the bottom, or sometimes at the top, depending on where the price is. But at the thick part of this truth line, as we call it, or you can click on the refresh icon at the top left here next to the symbol.
So that's awesome. So a lot of times you guys will hear me, draw my trend lines on Thinkorswim, and it ends up being broken, and I can say, hey, this trend line was not respected, price broke through it, let's clean up our chart, let's get it out of here, and we should be leaving it behind for a while, so we're not going to worry about it, and I'll delete it, and that will clean up the chart. Now, in the same breath, Dan might want to go up and click on manual tuning right now, and if Dan goes and does that, the system is going to find probably that old trend line back. It might find additional, you see that line came back on. You might want to, look at that point and go, wait, I want to put this back on. So I refreshed my analysis. TrendSpider is looking at the most convicted trend lines now, depending on what's happening with price and things are happening with the chart. You guys should still use a bit of your own personal knowledge to go, okay, this happened. Let me go and manually tune it. Let me get all the lines back on here. Let me find the ones that, might be, coming up next. And I do this pretty often. So that same line that I deleted, yesterday, I might say, oh, wait, we're bouncing off this line and I haven't refreshed my analysis. I need to know what's happening next. You can do two things. You can refresh the analysis, or you can just flip back to manual tuning and get that line back on that chart. So that's very important to bring to light.
And to do that, you flip to manual tuning and you double click on any of the lines. And that will lock them, so when you go back into auto tuning mode, it'll still be on your screen. And if it's on your screen, you can create an alert on it, so you can then have it monitor that line or whatever you want.
Yep. So I think that answered viewer 100's question in regards to that.
It does not currently pick up patterns like head and shoulders. That is on the roadmap. That's something that we will be working on very soon. I don't know, Dan, should I just go into the roadmap?
Yeah, I think you go into the roadmap, and then meanwhile, people will ask questions, and we can kind of go back and answer those questions while you're talking.
Okay. It does not support any Canadian exchanges right now. We support New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, American Stock Exchange, a bunch of futures exchanges, 900 Forex pairs, and 300 crypto pairs at the moment. We do plan to add Canada. We do plan to add the UK, and hopefully every other market around the world at some point. So in terms of roadmap, we've got a pretty extensive roadmap. It's probably 2 years of development work. What you're looking at today is about a year and a half of development work, so there's a lot to come. Some of those features are automated pattern recognition, so things like head and shoulders, cup and handle, flag, pennants, triangles, the detection of them and the ability to detect them across time frames and as they're forming, because they tend to form on smaller patterns, in fractal theory, and then they will form on larger time frames as well. So, there's a potential to be able to identify those while they're forming. We also plan to build alerts that work an entire watch list. So you can have it monitor an entire watch list for a moving average cross or the formation of a hammer candlestick on any particular time frame, or anything like that. We're going to be building a screener that will generate watch lists for you. So you'll be able to basically say, I want to find charts that have, trend line support from the weekly time frame and prices within, X% of them, things like that. And then, of course, we have about 150 more indicators and candlestick patterns to add, and the ability to have multiple, like 3 and more time frames on the chart, because right now it's limited to just 2. A lot of that functionality is coming this year. So, we have a development team that's full-time, and, they're working on building those features out. A lot of what you're seeing today was just launched yesterday morning. We do a release every Tuesday or Wednesday morning. And the lower indicators, the ability to have multi-time frame on them, the different color themes are all brand new features that just came out yesterday. And then, for anyone who decides to be a user, we also offer training where, we'll hop on the phone with you and walk you through it and, show you how to customize it to match your style and all that.
Awesome. That is great. So Melrod just asked about support and resistance areas.
Okay.
I was wondering if you could touch on that a little bit.
Definitely. On top, there's a menu called support and resistance, and there's currently 2 options. So there's a depth and a trend view. We're adding a 3rd option. We know it's missing to detect traditional horizontal price levels. This is a little bit different. And you can see when you turn this on a chart, it generates a heat map of where potential support and resistance are. And it's actually a little clearer on a darker chart, so I'm going to flip my theme over here. So you can just see what that looks like on a darker chart. And what this is doing is it's putting a grid over the price action made up of little boxes. And anytime trend line moves through one of those boxes on the grid, on the time frame that you're on, but also the 2 that sandwich it. So I'm on the 60-minute chart, so it's going to look at 30, 60, and 120. It colors that box red, and every box above it red. The more times this happens, the brighter the red is. So this is a way to visualize where there's a lot of potential trend line support and resistance that you may not be able to see without completely cluttering up your chart any other way. And it's a great confirmation. I don't think anybody should really trade off it completely because there's a lot of noise in it. But if you see trend line support and then you see a lot of red underneath it, you can assume that there's a lot more trend line support hiding under there on various time frames.
Okay.
When you flip through the trend view, it gives you the same exact visualization, but it doesn't color all subsequent boxes above or below it red, just the ones where a trend line passes through. So you can see, for example, here, there's a trend line going through this one that you can see. There's more red underneath it that's probably not a very strong trend line, or it's from a different time frame, but it's still coloring it red because it's there.
Okay. I like the heat map. That's a great explanation. I was curious about that myself. So if you guys notice, if he goes back to support and resistance, the depth, and you can see where price starts to break particular areas that it's a little bit less dark, right? There's less color, so it's breaking through or showing. It's kind of coinciding nicely with price action, it appears. On the last chart, I think in particular, or maybe that was when you were on the 30-minute of Square.
I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember either, but you can.
I nervously move charts around as I talk.
Right. So. Yeah, I know. I'm bad. I'll move my mouse around. I'm serial mouse mover. Questions always asking me, hey, can you stop moving your mouse around on your stream? So I'm trying to get better at that. But
someone asked about Fibs, so
yeah.
I can show Fibs very quickly. You just flip them on. It will measure the most recent complete move. It's not 100%. Occasionally, like you see here, it'll measure a earlier move than it probably should. But I'd say about 90% of the time it gets the correct Fib measurement instantaneously. And what's really cool about it is it works across time frames. So you can turn on the long-term Fibs and overlay them on top of a shorter-term chart. And when you're looking at multi-time frame trading, that can be really useful. And you can see that this long-term Fib here, and this is the shorter-term Fib there. The other thing to point out about Fibs, let me just clean this up a little bit, is there as a point in time. So wherever this truth line is at that moment, that's when the Fib was last calculated. So when you see the truth line kind of off to the right, I'm trying to find one where that might be the case. And the Fib is off to the right. If you refresh it, the Fib will move with it.
Yep. And I believe you said editable Fibs are coming in the future, right?
That is correct. So not just editable Fibs, but additional types of Fibs, fans, extensions. Yeah. I forget what they're called, but the twirly ones. Yeah. We're going to basically just add another one of these 3 dot buttons right next to the Fib thing where you can configure and select which ones you want, just like indicators and candlestick patterns.
Yep. That is great. And in terms of trend lines, I know you mentioned at some point being able to draw manual trend lines.
Yeah. So actually that's probably coming sooner than later. I don't think it'll be September, but I'm guessing by the middle of October, users will be able to draw their own trend lines, add their own chart annotations, put boxes, text, circles. And, we're going to try to improve on that a little bit. A lot of people, including some of our own team members here, like to look for correlations between lower indicators and upper chart price action. So we'll have a few new types of annotators where it'll, circle on all three of them as you move along it. And when you click, it'll, draw it on all of the indicators instead of you having to draw a circle, at the top and then at the bottom and then at the lower charts, to try to improve that a little bit too. Because we think, honestly, it's ridiculous that people have to do all that by hand.
Sure. Yeah. So that's great. That's great. Any more questions? Comments in the chat? What do you guys think? Dan's covered pretty much every bit of the product. Oh, somebody wants to look at CRM. I think somebody wants to.
Sure.
Elrod's looking to make a trade, probably.
Here's CRM. Yes, sir. Get this up a little bit. This is CRM daily. Would not be surprised to see a bounce at some point. It looks strong, though.
Yep.
Any other requests?
Looking at taking profits. Great. Hey, that's good to hear.
Definitely.
Yep, it looks like you may need to soon. So you guys can see all those conviction lines. You have all of those trend lines. So it's going to, it might extend into all of those. But at one point, does the stock, start to trade sideways? At this point, you would look for, dark cloud cover, evening star, some type of candlestick formation, to let you know, hey, got some hanging man at the top. Different types of candles that are going to indicate, and you could, pull up their candlestick recognition if you're not familiar with all those. And again, use this as a more informative, educational tool to make a better decision.
This is very interesting. If you look down at Williams and RSI here, you can see right when it peaked the last time, right, touched the trend line, touched the top Bollinger Band. The short-term daily Williams and RSI peaked above the weekly for a brief second, right?
Yep.
So this is a type of correlation that you can't really get anywhere else. Ability to use cross time frames across various types of indicators and trend lines all at the same time.
Can you show briefly, can you remove those lower indicators and then show everyone watching how to set those up from scratch? Because I'm sure This is going to be very popular and people are going to want to know exactly how to do it.
Yes. So anyone who signs up, I think starting tomorrow, is going to just see them automatically. But for now, to turn indicators on, it's this squiggly button in the top toolbar. And then to select which indicators you want, it's the three dots next to it. And then it's just like any other thing. So you can add Williams. We have all the abbreviations in there, so you can just type RSI for Relative Strength Index, and you can click Apply. It'll then add them to your charts and add them to each individual chart's controls. So you can control which time frames appear on which ones simply by clicking the boxes on them next to them.
Okay. Can you point out real closely to which one is which and what the solid lines are and what the dotted lines are?
Absolutely. So they're color-coded. So the green one is the Williams, the blue one is the RSI. The dashed lines are always from the secondary time frame. That's on everything. So anytime you see a dashed line in the system, it's from your second time frame. And anytime the line is solid, it's your first time frame. Okay. Someone requested Mankind. Let's pull that up. Yep. I think that's Mankind. You've been trading too long when you know the company's name by their ticker symbol.
Yeah.
And we can zoom in on this one a little bit.
Great.
You can kind of see what the system's picking up here for it. Actually, let me zoom in this daily, weekly. Yeah. And you can see it's actually resting right on this daily trend line right here. Mm-hmm. Now, I didn't show anyone this earlier, but if there's extra trend lines you don't want to see, you can always just right-click on them to remove them. Take them off the chart. You can bring them back by clicking the orange link that'll show up here. Yep, this is a pretty spike and pullback right here. I wonder what it's going to do next.
So if you look, now switch to the 5-minute time frame, but keep the daily up.
Yes, sir.
And turn off the Bollinger Bands on 5.
I'll just turn all the indicators off.
Okay, cool. So here you go, guys. So you got the 5-minute chart. You got that daily trend line right below that he just mentioned it was resting on. You guys can see pretty much a pretty mean, down channel on it. So,
yeah, but you can see how it just stops at this daily trend line, right?
Yep.
If you turn off all the other trend lines there. And that's really cool. I mean, how many short-term traders do you think are out there who are looking at, long-term price action under short-term charts?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So
yeah, mankind is a 5-cent tick symbol.
Yeah, I don't think it was always. I don't know.
I've never been a fan of those.
Yep. I know Lucian particularly hates them. He's nodding his head right now listening. So Apple, there's a really good one to cover.
Yeah. And it's a popular one, but there's there's a lot of liquidity, which makes the trend lines detection on it a lot more accurate in general. The more liquid it is, the fewer price gaps there are. And one thing, I didn't get into this, but TrendSpider will generally ignore price gaps. It's not going to draw a trend line that connects one point to another point when there's a gap in between them. Like you see here, there's no trend line starting down here. You can configure that, so you can actually make it more or less sensitive to those in the options by changing this number here. But there's, once you perfect like your settings to match your analysis style, it's going to do it exactly the same every time, no matter what chart you're looking at. You'll notice it always analyzes 320 candlesticks, no matter what time frame you're on. It's for consistency.
Okay. In terms of like a longer term chart, so Tim Davis is one of our co-founders, and he's a big time long-term chartist. Do you see maybe weekly and monthly, and maybe possibly ability to go back further than 320 in the future?
Yes. So monthly is definitely coming. And we're going to give you the ability to configure how many candlesticks it looks at. It just needs to be the same for every single chart that it analyzes. So you'll be able to say 320, 640, 1280, and kind of select from a number of predetermined ones. And then it'll do it the same way every single time.
Awesome. Okay.
The other thing that'll be cool once you can do that is, we want to make it so you can drag this analysis line to the past. So you can take the line into the past and see what the system would have analyzed at that point in time, as a way to kind of back test, and also as a way for people to perfect their settings if they want to mess with them. Move it back, change it around. It will ignore everything to the right of it for its analysis. And you can see how things would have played out.
So that's a really good, important thing that he just touched on. You guys know when I'm drawing my Fibonacci tool, I'm sometimes drawing it, 2 or 3 times, and then seeing how my custom Fibonacci lines line up with price. I want to go back and really make sure that I'm respecting the right peak. It could be, a really long weekly candle wick, but the Fibonacci really should have been drawn from, the daily candle wick, wherever that close was. And then, depending on how the candlesticks behave, that'll tell you if you've done it right. So it's a really good way to do that, get in a habit of doing that anyways. Everybody wants to back test, their strategies. And, with any tool, when you first start using it, we said this about Trade Ideas, which is an awesome product as well. You want to give yourself time to adjust to it. The good news is that, this is a really good tool that you're going to quickly pick up, and it shouldn't take too long for you to get comfortable with it. But give yourself time. Maybe back test it, see how things are working. Make some modest trades. Don't go all in, but give your brain time to adjust to the new information and get used to using it, so you don't make any mistakes.
This thing's breaking out right in front of us.
There it is. There it is. Really cool to see.
So somebody asked the differences between the Pro and Elite plan in terms of in relation to analysis. You get all the same analysis options. There's no differences. Automated Fibs. This is actually an older plan, but the Elite plan has 20 alerts that you can have active at one time. Pro plan has 10. We plan to change that down the road and increase those. They're just very resource intensive. The only other differences are Forex data, OTC data, and then the duration of time that your alerts can live for. I think it's 45 days on Elite versus 30 for Pro. If anybody wants to, try it out, we have a free trial. Take us up on it. If you need more time, just send us an email. We'll extend it up to 2 weeks for anybody who asks. And make sure to take us up on some training where we can one-on-one with you and walk you through exactly, how the system works and how to customize it for you.
Right. Okay, guys. So I think that pretty much concludes the webinar. Thank you guys all for joining. Unless there's any other questions, this was very informative. We want to, extend our thanks to Dan. Again, thank you to David for pointing this product out. The Bullish Bears wants to help, put TrendSpider on the map. It's helped my trading. It can definitely, you guys have seen the value. It's going to help your trading as well. And we need to be, as human beings, we need to know that we can make mistakes. I mean, I just said on the other day on the stream, wow, I really wish I had checked the TrendSpider chart. The trend line was right there, and there were 2 or 3 above it, and there was one that I hadn't drawn or hadn't, even glanced over at, and I could have made a better trade. I could have, held on to that trade a little bit longer, got some more profit. So really utilize it. I don't think there's a fake out filter other than when you guys see a candlestick breakout of a trend line, if you have the breakout indicator turned on, it'll show you. And so really the best fake out filter that I can mention to you guys is your own analysis. So you guys know when I talk about falling wedge breakouts that a lot of times there's a high probability that if you didn't buy the bottom of the falling wedge, which required you to take more risk, that once it breaks the top of a falling wedge, it will often pull back and test the top of the falling wedge before continuing on, if it continues on at all. So it's really about timing your entries so that you can stomach those pullbacks. So there's really nothing to say that I know of on TrendSpider that, hey, this is a false breakout, but it is pretty great how it does identify breakouts and breakdowns. So if you want to show that a little bit, I think you already did briefly.
Yes. Give me just 1 second. I think my internet is acting up with something. There we go. Sorry about that. So breakouts are on every chart. There's this third button here, which is your breakout highlighter. And let me add trend lines back to this. Sorry, I had them turned off. And when you come across a point in time where price breaks through a trend line, right, it'll draw a circle if price started above it and closed below it, and it's red, or a green circle if it started below it and closed above it. When you see a trend line like you do here, with a lot of red, green kind of motion on it, it's usually a sign that it's consolidating around that trend line, and that a bigger move is coming up. And one of the things that is kind of important to note is some of TrendSpider's trend line detection formulas look for traditional lines. I think somebody asked this earlier. Like why is price going through candlesticks? Some of it will look for traditional lines. Others will look for trend lines where price has interacted a lot, but ignore the number of times price has violated it. And those sometimes tend to be the most predictive lines down the road because they're essentially a confluence, of all the trend lines that are in that general area mushed together, an average, if you will, of a line where price has touched a lot. So, this is probably a good example of that. You have red, green, red, green, red, green, red, green, red, green, and then you've got a bounce directly off it right up here on Apple. And that's something that we see pretty often.
Okay. Any more questions, guys? I'm going to post a discount code. That's all right with Dan. I'm going to post that in the chat. That's a pretty exclusive discount for you guys where you guys go for the yearly plan. You're actually kind of double stacking those codes and getting up to 60% off this product for the first year, which is very, very generous considering all the different things it does. You're going to make your money back many times over once you start using this product. So I just posted that in the chat for all you guys. And yeah, so take advantage of it. If you guys haven't signed up yet, now's your chance to start the trial. And, you know, you're going to see me using this more and more on the streams. There might be a point where at some point I'm not using Thinkorswim at all, right? And I'm just using TrendSpider, so that might replace it. I think you want the ability to watch multiple charts, which is another thing that I think would be cool to see TrendSpider do in the future.
That will be available towards the end of this year. It'll be another distinction between the two plans. So, you know, one plan will let you have like 4 charts open at one time, basically browser tabs, and the other will let you have 8.
So cool.
So cool, that's definitely coming.
Yep. So everything on the wish list that I can think of, Dan has said, you know, it's coming. So I'm glad I have the product, you know, now to use, and we'll get all those goodies as they roll out. So unless there's any other questions, we'll let Dan continue on with his day. Thank you so much, Dan, for joining us. Love our product, and you know, this is going to be great. It's going to be uploaded on our YouTube channel, so you guys can watch it again and get all the education from it. So
thank you very much, Dan. I appreciate you setting this up, and thanks to everybody who joined and watched. Appreciate the time.
all right, guys, enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.